I'm Shane. I've been introduced. Just to give you a bit of context on the presentation, I'm sure everybody's aware of the cycles and the customer journey being in marketing, so I'm preaching to the choir. But essentially, years back in college, one of our books that we studied was Joseph Campbell's A Hero with a Thousand Faces. Essentially, this is the breakdown that every story that's constructed across all cultures, be it Cuchulainn, be it King Arthur, it all follows a certain formula. And I was fascinated with this. I was going like, there's a tick box for telling a story. This is great. And then through my career, I started looking at it, and it was only when I started to see the issues and the struggles you have internally, Eva addressed it earlier, with trying to justify your place in marketing in the company and how marketing works, and how when you produce a campaign or anything, that it's not just marketing that are involved in it, it's customer service, it's development, it's IT, it's everyone, and how everybody has to be bought in on this brand experience or campaign. So I started looking at it and saying like, so here's the hero's journey. It's 12 steps. If anyone hasn't seen it before, just contact us afterwards. I can send you the slides, or just look up Joseph Campbell. I've created this one, but it's essentially going from the ordinary world into the underground, or in the ancient times, it was going into the other world. In Cuchulainn, he climbed down into the underworld or stuff like this. Going through that journey, going through the ordeals, setbacks, and then coming back and being able to be a champion, or returning to his life changed for the better most of the time. So I started looking at that and saying, like, this is actually a great template to introduce it and to actually explain this internally on how, when you do a campaign, how this cycle is created. So from the ordinary world to the digital world, I know some of you are in FMCG, some are in SaaS. You can kind of make from this what you want and take away bits as you can, but it's really just a template to kind of explain to the wider company when you're setting up a campaign and saying, these are the touch points, this is how it'll holistically flow. So from that, just kind of slotting in things, so I started to see a pattern of, well, actually this does work quite well. Like, so you have your passive branding, the stuff that you're not pushing awareness. I'm from a betting background for the last almost 15 years. We do a lot of passive branding as well, with sponsorship, LEDs and stuff like that. So I started just to tick the boxes on how I could explain it to both our marketing team and to the wider company. It's always an uncomfortable conversation when you say, I need 21 million for a media strategy that's going to cover digital sponsorship and TV and out of home. And it's just to tell that story. Now, I wouldn't sit down with the heroes thing, but it's to get the idea around to them. So the first step on this is the ordinary world. So this really does cover the branding, sponsorship events, and I suppose one company that stands out in this, sorry Aoife for one of your competitors, is Red Bull. So a sugar energy drink, that's pretty much it, but they could brand themselves Red Bull gives you wings, but they came out with this thing where they did this almost very passive thing where they sponsor events. They sponsor a lot of high contact energy daredevil type events, but they've also brought it into community, and the Soapbox Derby is a perfect example of this. Other companies doing passive ways is Coca-Cola. So they remove it from the brand, but the brand is front and center in everything, but they kind of link it to environmental issues, or they're very good at linking it to social issues or celebrations. Hunter Weber was another great example of this. It actually made me go, once I seen this ad, it made me go and find out who Hunt Webb was. But from the simple example of adding a hat to something makes it a completely different character. So it's essentially selling what their brand does, and selling it in a very extreme way. Scrabble came out a campaign about, I think, 6 to 7 years ago, where they did this. I thought this was an amazing example of telling what your product does, but doing it in an entertaining way. It's obviously elephant, but the words are all jumbled up. You have to make them work in the thing. It sells the product perfectly. And then For me, one of the big ones, the late O2, now 3, did a campaign, I'd say a good few years ago now, but at the time you have to understand, so there was a whole mobile battle going on where all the companies were competing with each other and they were lowering themselves to the lowest common denominator. They were giving away phones, they were giving away this. And O2 said, we can't continue doing this because our cost base is just flying out the door. We're retaining market share, but at what cost? So they decided to take a brave step back and say, right, we're going to set it about an attitude and deliver a value, an ethos. And with that, they came out with this amazing campaign that they did, an umbrella campaign that then they would do value messages, product messages, any kind of messages they wanted it. But the attitude on the campaign came out, so I'll just show you.
I used to be a cat. Every day the same. I'd be aloof till lunch, then coldly indifferent after. To me, everything was just, yeah. Then it hit me. Why be so cat? Why not be a bit more dog? I mean, look at the world today. It's amazing. Running, amazing. Chasing cars, amazing. Sticks, amazing. Carpe diem. It means grab the frisbee. Maybe we should all be a bit more dog. Be more dog. O2.
So it was a great example on how they set up something and then carried it through. So there was no messaging on we have this product or we have this offering or anything like that. They just came out with a brand statement of be more dog, don't go along with everyone else. They integrated this through brilliantly, and then into our next, the call to adventure, where you start doing the value message. I don't know, in different industries there's not much case for a value message. For in the industry of gambling, it's obviously we've better odds, or we can give you money back if your bet loses. But with the example of O2, they carried this through into their
O2 Refresh is the first contract that helps you get the phone you want, when you want. The Samsung Galaxy S4, now on O2 Refresh. Stop waiting and start getting. Only from o2.co.uk or any O2 store. Be more dog.
So again, I hate the word 360 campaign, but it was an integrated campaign that they could stem 30, like so the usual minute media ad at first, and then they condense it down to 30 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Another great example is IKEA. They, from looking inwards, are a perfect example of a brand that's on tapping on the vein of what they're offering and the experience. It's about lifestyle.
IKEA, the wonderful everyday.
So again, it was a perfect example of getting across what you offer as a product, what you offer as a brand. It resonates with people because everyone knows the kitchen as much as you like to clean it and worship it as a place that all your conversations go on, it's very hard to maintain it. So on to the third refusal of the call. He refuses the adventure. So I'm sure everybody's aware that, like, you do a lot of value messaging, you do a lot of awareness. It's still very hard for customers getting in, getting them through the door, getting them to buy your product. A lot of customers now are more into researching themselves, so they spend a lot of time, and it was brought up in earlier conversations, they spend a lot of time researching. So if you're going to buy a car, you'll learn everything about this car. You'll know more than the salesperson when you walk in, and you're investing that much more. So this is where kind of content comes in, and being on front of that content. Again, Red Bull have, in terms of content for a brand that's just a sugary drink, have, I think, broken the seal. Literally broken the seal on this one. I don't think anyone will ever do a stunt any bigger that had so much reach. So essentially from beginning this, they had a 5 million campaign, or what they thought was a 5 million campaign. Over the course of 3 years, turned into 15 million, but I still would think it was worth every penny. So I would hate to be on the content team of Red Bull after that came out, because, yeah, where do you go from that? I think the only one that surpassed that, in a sense, I don't think as a stunt, but was when Tesla sent the car into space, was the next big one. A company or a channel that does it really well is Channel 4. So when they got the racing rights to television over the last couple of years, it's switched to ITV now. But Channel 4 basically brought it to the mainstream. So I don't know if everyone is familiar with the Grand National, but in our industry, it's one of the go-to top headline sports. It's our biggest points in our yearly calendar is Cheltenham, Grand National, and then Christmas for some reason. But they changed the attitude and literally came out with this campaign that showed you the content, the excitement of Grand National, but brought it literally to the people. So. And subsequent to this, the viewing figures went up for Grand National and for Channel 4, who didn't retain the sponsorship of Grand National or coverage of it, but did amazing things for the community of horse racing in general. From there, in the hero's journey, it's meeting with the mentor. So essentially, this is where your SEO, social, YouTube, and PPC comes in. But I'm sure everyone's aware how they work, but it's really just on how to get value out of this. I think one of the biggest ones at the moment that we're facing in our industry is trust. Like, it's something that people are putting the spotlight on gambling and the effects of gambling, and we have a right to be responsible. And as was done in a conversation earlier today, it's like we have to be responsible for that and showcase if there's anyone that has gambling addiction or anything and try and help them. The other side of it is that obviously creates negative sentiment, so we have to do our best to continue to have positive sentiment. So Trustpilot is something that I've been a big advocate of over the last few years, and I've seen the positive results, not just in sentiment, but also in your PPC campaigns. I don't know how many people do PPC campaigns and AdWord buying, but we've seen a dramatic increase in the reduction in costs in PPC and the engagement and the click-throughs and eventually our FTBs by including Trustpilot in our AdWords campaigns. So it will give the star rating in it, and it's a really effective way of utilising something that we're paying for anyway. The other way it's really good for SEO content is to kind of reuse any content that you're producing and recycle it. So an example of that is we've a podcast. So our podcast in Matchbook over the last 7 months has won awards in the marketplace. Up until yesterday, I didn't know, well, I knew internally that podcasts were quite big for us, but Ireland consumes, is the third biggest consumer in podcasts in the world, next to South Korea and I think France. I might be wrong on the second one. But we've found this very effective way of kind of bringing people in passively. We're giving them information, we're not trying to upsell them or anything, and they're engaging with that information regularly and coming back. Our biggest problem to date is how do we then cross-sell them or target them throughout that journey again and introduce our app to them or introduce our value message. And we're actually seeing really positive results with this. So from there, the fifth one is crossing the first threshold. So this is from making the customer aware, from selling the value message, and it will differ for different companies, but it's basically the first time they engage and cross the threshold into the digital domain. And just to kind of keep that cycle and show you that integrated marketing campaign, I'll keep on either bringing Red Bull or O2 into most of the conversation. But it was a great way where they had their Be More Dog, which was their umbrella, but then they had their products, upsell, their value message integrated, and you could go and basically interact where you want to go. Landing pages are very important for step 4 as well for SEO markup. So when doing landing pages, I don't want to be like boring people, but make sure we've found an effective increase in click-throughs and SEO bot gathering from just using headings properly, basically spelling out everything quite literally on the landing page. We've seen an increase in that. Another good example for something that's obviously not selling a digital product, but is selling a brand experience is Oreo, and the way they have sites that kind of bring in the power of the creativity of Oreo, of the everyone opens an Oreo, plays with an Oreo in a certain way. So it introduced this. I thought it was a great example of how you can kind of pick the creative identity you have as an Oreo potential customer. We've gotten them over the door. Now it's sign up. Sign up is our biggest hurdle. So we can get our customers right through to the process. They register, and it's when they sign up and then to try and get them to deposit, like we can lose up to 30% of our customers in that step alone. Like, so we're after investing so much in getting them to that point. It's really important to try and get them over the line. Square, a credit card app for your phone. It has a great product page for something that sells things. I think it's one of the best product setup pages, explaining what it does, explaining its unique selling points, and it's something that works really well. In my previous job in Bet Victor, we had to kind of show our products as well. So there was a lot of products. We'd create different products for different betting markets, and the same.
Introducing the £1 million bet, where a £1 stake on the World Cup could win you up to £1 million. Keep track of current standings using the live leaderboard. If your winning bet has the biggest odds by the end of the tournament, the prize money is yours. Explore our quick picks for a selection of ready-made bets that could win you £1 million. Start from scratch and create your own £1 million bet with Price It Up Builder. You can edit them as you see fit. You also have £5,000 to win every match day if you can top the daily competition table. Stake £1 on the World Cup and win up to £1 million.
So when we offered this for the World Cup, it was introducing a new product and introducing a new campaign and value message. So this was engaged with tremendously. We had it on the bottom of the app on the product so that people could look at it, find out what they had to do really quickly, and having that kind of product information beside it is something that I find is very valuable. Even on your normal product pages, is to actually don't do it a step away, have it on the actual content page where they can find out how to place a bet for in our industry, but how you can do something through that. Then the approach, the setbacks occur, causing the hero to try new approach and ideas. So every product, well, at least digital product, has to update people when they've updated things or they've listened to the issues that customers have faced. Google are amazing at this. Dropbox and Envision are also really good products that do this. So when they have new product offerings, or they say, especially with Envision, I don't know if people are familiar with that product, but when they do a new update from customer surveys, they will always give a brief video when they send you the CRM email to say this is the changes, this is what's being updated. Again with Dropbox, they'll give you the information in nice, distinguishable content pieces and try and upsell you as well.
The Golden Goal is our new weekly football prediction game.
Again, in Bet Victor, we introduced, so we'd done a campaign in the Euros called the £1 Million Goal. We got great customer feedback and said, why don't you introduce this? Why don't you do something like this throughout the year? So the Golden Goal was our answer to the customer.
Help rules are available in our help centre. Make your predictions before kick-off and add some extra excitement to the big match with the Golden Goal.
So it's just kind of listen to them. So like that wasn't even our product roadmap. So it was a case of when the campaign finished, the Euros was really successful for us. And it was a case of we were looking at tweets, we were listening to customers' feedback, and we actually pushed that into our product roadmap. If you think about the end of the Euros, which was in August, to have that delivered in, now most of the back end was done because of the Golden Goal campaign was pretty much the same, but to have that released, turned around, the campaign done for it, and I'll show you the TV ad in a later stage, but to have it all turned around in essentially 3.5 weeks was a testament to the team involved. But it's something that I would always say is listen to your customers, even on negative things. You've already brought it up with your feedback on Lucozade, but you should always listen to your customers, because if they're invested in your brand, right, a lot of them will complain and do it negatively for negative sake, but you still take on that feedback as best you can if it's feedback. Bring it on to the negative feedback. The hero experienced a major hurdle. This is where crisis comms, and I don't know if I'm sure everybody's company has a crisis comms manual. If not, if any kind of advice I can give you is go out now and talk to your marketing director or managing director and tell them that we need to prepare a crisis comms document. We've gone to the extent in the previous 2 companies I've been in is building a digital one as well, so that the customer service staff, when approached with certain things can have a playbook on how they answer and respond. It's absolutely amazing if you can respond really quickly to a customer that's coming in with a negative experience, how they can become an ambassador and walk away with a positive experience in the way you deal with something quickly and treat them like a person or a hero in my example. But one of the examples of a really good crisis comms campaign, from basically making a campaign from an absolute huge mistake, was KFC. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with, I think it was a year and a half ago in London, KFC had gone through a deal with a new facilitator. So the supplier said that they could produce or supply the same amount of chicken to KFC that their previous supplier did for a fraction of the cost. So being a business, they said, yeah, why not? So the first week of them committing to this, they ended up not being able to commit at all. So basically London ground to a halt, or all the KFCs in London ground to a halt, which made headline news.
A bizarre story of our times. After KFC runs out of chicken, the police are forced to warn people to stop calling. It's not an emergency.
Well, I get a free rice box then coming down because I've been trying. I'm had to go to Burger King.
So if there's a testament to brand loyalty, it's that woman there. And a product she hates is spelling out she had to go to Burger King. I'm sorry if there's anyone that works for Burger King in the room. They came out with this campaign immediately, so they bought it, and a load of media space, went front page in papers, and bought a lot of digital space, start pushing it on social, and they came out with it. They just put their hand up, we fecked up, but they were honest. They didn't try and make an explanation about it. They just put it up, and that honesty gained them to, well, one, they ended up winning the Cannes Lions for that campaign, which would have never existed if someone didn't change manufacturing or suppliers throughout the year. So it's, I suppose, always have a crisis comms, or always have a playbook in how to respond to things, I think is the moral of this story. Number 9 is the reward. So the hero earns his reward. He buys the product, he goes on. Most people will say, that's my job done. I think this is a really, really important place where you can still sell your brand, or you can upsell, or you can sell a product. Great example of this outside in the FMCG is Innocent. I think Innocent's branding is absolutely amazing. And it's just the little details. Another example that I don't have it here on the presentation is Citizen M. It's just how they integrate their brand and tonality through their entire product offering is fantastic. But the example for anyone that hasn't bought a Innocent product is the inquisitive ones like me would mess around with the product and their messaging in it, stop looking at my bottom, or did you ever consider that the universe might be inside here and you're locked out on the carton? I just think their tonality, their brand tone is just injected throughout. Another good example, and I don't have it on the slide, is when they did the little warmers on top of their bottles of product, which just flew off the shelf, introducing something that they got people to actually sow for a charity, and then it basically increased sales exponentially over, I think, the winter period where most fruit drinks would be lower. You'd probably have a better answer on the sales dip towards Christmas on soft drinks. Yeah. Another one that I've found from experience, yes, I'm guilty of buying a BB-8 Bluetooth toy. It was for my daughter, but when you basically set up the product, you have to set it up on your phone. It asks you to offer into the email subscription, and this was the first email that's received. So it's just a great way of, one, entering into their CRM database to be upsold in the future. But they do it in such, the tonality is just a great way to keep you connected with the brand being Star Wars for me, the initial buyer, but then the brand selling me products that I'll become familiar with and hopefully purchase further on. Another one is Phil's Coffee. So we do this in our own in Matchbook as well, and we don't do it as simply as this, But when you make a purchase online, so I don't know if you know Phil's Coffee, it's a Canadian and American company that basically you can order your coffee online and then collect it. Starbucks, I think, do it here as well. But when they do it and you basically do a simple smile or how is the service, smile or not, it's amazing what information you can get from a frown or a smile and how you can react to that, because at different times during the day that service might be the case of there wasn't enough staff on when there was a peak amount of people coming to pick up their coffees, so they could actually change their whole business model to cater for this and to cater for that kind of waves in customer interaction. So then the road back, so obviously they've, in my case, placed their bet, bought their product. It's the passive awareness and that stage where you can still be concentrating on getting the next acquisition or strengthening your retention. I think a brilliant example of this was the British Heart Foundation. So obviously it's a great foundation in the UK. It's something that does a lot of charity events, so there's runs, cycles, there's anything like that, and you can sign up for it. But what they did using a product called Spirable, I don't know if anyone's familiar with it. So it's basically a live feed. So they produced video content, but then they could make it personalized to basically all the people that set up in that event. And to just show you an example of it. So it's something quite simple if you can have the back end that can do it, but like the engagement that people that received these afterwards after our event, that forwarded them to their friends, that basically got that awareness and perception out there that more people would turn up to the next event and join. I think it's absolutely fantastic, and the British Heart Foundation comes up again in this presentation. I just think some of the work they do is absolutely amazing. The 11th step, resurrection. So basically your customer is basically hit with CRM, content engagement, or loyalty incentives. So they're familiar with your product, but you want to try and kind of keep them. Now in our world, it's a very competitive world in the gaming gambling sector. Most customers will have 6 competitor apps on their phone at any one time. So it's getting that person to come back to place their bet on the next match that weekend or the week after. It's a very hard process, and we invest heavily in it. One of the examples I like to show is Uber, that giving compliments basically after the service, that you can kind of say it's an excellent service, which is engaging both the driver, that makes them feel better, but it's also giving that extra recall, that you're engaging in an extra process after you've purchased the trip, that you'll remember it as well. Sometimes it's you remember giving a gift more than receiving a gift in cases. An example here is Bet Victor. So back to the golden goal, we had a successful Euros. We were at a thing where our customers were saying, why don't you do this and continue it through the year. We had to make obviously a business decision to invest in a free prediction model. So that's what it was. It wasn't a bet. It was anyone can go in and place a prediction on who'll score the first goal in a set match each week, and they could win up to 25,000, sometimes up to 50,000. So there was a large investment in it, but a very short time to get this message across. I was lucky to have, we had a partnership with Liverpool, just had started that season, and we had, obviously, with a partnership of that scale, you get to use assets or talent from Liverpool. One of those assets was to be able to use the manager for an appearance. I cheekily just asked, could we use him for a TV ad? Is that in the books? They naively said, yeah, you can use him. So with that, I got a production crew straight to Liverpool that weekend, got in front of them before they could change their mind and produced this ad.
With Bet Victor's Golden Goal, you get a free weekly prediction to guess the game's first scorer and the minute it's scored. You can win serious money. Okay, I'll guess the player, but what minute should I go for? Let's ask the Liverpool manager what he thinks, shall we?
Statistically, most of the goals are scored in the 45th and in the 90th minute. But actually, the average time for the first goal is the 31st. But this weekend, who knows? First goal wins.
So, like, the idea of this was to basically, one, use everybody loves Jurgen Klopp in our TV ads to get awareness. Two was to do a free prediction model, which would get people in, and basically my whole piece on it was to make it habitual, make it something that becomes part of your process. On Sunday, you get up, you buy the paper, you go down to the shops, you have a coffee, and then you place your free prediction, which we've seen an increase from the free prediction went on to people will place another 2 bets of sums of over £5, the majority of them. So it really was an effective way of doing something. And it's, funnily enough, our bets and our customer activities, our actives as we'd call them, the amount of people on our product at any time spiked every time the particular match was on for the Golden Goal each week. So it was really effective. Return with the Elixir. So everybody talks about good customer experience. They talk about it and don't do it properly. It's so important, good customer experience, to make your customers the ambassadors, and more importantly as well is to make your staff ambassadors for your brand as well. We can always be customer facing, but sometimes you need to have your call center staff to be ambassadors to really get your brand, to buy into that and push it. But a really good example of that kind of future ambassador experience is that someone buys into the brand, that it actually becomes part of mainstream, like slang words or sayings out of that become mainstream. And a perfect example of this was in the UK Parliament there last year, when Theresa May basically knocked the market share for Compare the Market up gave her basically free advertising by coming out with this comment.
If he wants to end uncertainty, if he wants to deal with the issues he raised, if he wants to end the uncertainty and deal with the issues he raised in his response to my statement, then he should vote for a deal. Simples.
So, using the Meerkats tagline was of huge benefit to them. Basically, the media value that Compare the Market got from that was, I think it was up to 22 million in perceived media value. That was covered in every news station. It was covered on every blog, every social feed, and it was just really beneficial to them. So that work and investment in coming out with taglines, or like one of their competitors, Go Compare, coming out with the singing maestro and stuff like that, it creates recall, it creates that kind of thing that we need to do as brands. But I suppose when you don't have, when I say you don't have a budget, you would just have media spend and it would be just for TVC. The British Heart Foundation did a campaign that essentially in a TV spot, this was before social was kicking off, but I think it's still one of the strongest campaigns that actually saved lives, that actually made their customers the hero. So I wanted to end with this because it's something that was so effective. It was a minute spot, which then was cut down into a 30-second spot, but it actually saved lives. And if anyone argues with the effectiveness of television, I always direct them back this way and say, after this campaign went out, like the cases of people dying of cardiac arrest decreased considerably. I don't have the exact figure, but it's just an amazing one that literally makes their customers a hero.
My name is Vinnie Jones, and I'm going to teach you a lesson you'll never forget. There are times in life when being tough comes in handy. Say some geezer collapses in front of you. What do? We need a volunteer that ain't breathing. Here's one I made earlier. First thing you do is you check him over. If he ain't responsive or he ain't breathing, or he's making noises like this, then his heart start working, he's having a cardiac arrest. Look lively. First call 999. Then you do hands-only CPR, and no kissing. You only kiss your missus on the lips. Watch. Lock your fingers together, knuckles up, then push down, right on the throttling. Push down 5 or 6 centimetres. That's about 2 inches in old money. Push hard and fast, about 2 times a second, like to the beat of staying alive. Worried you'll hurt him? Better a cracked rib than him kicking the bucket. Keep this up till the ambulance arrives. So don't forget, check him over. Call 999, push hard and fast to staying alive. It works. Hands only CPR. It ain't as hard as it looks. If you want to come in handy in an emergency, why not sign up for one of our Heart Start courses?
It was an absolutely fantastic campaign, and I think it ends my presentation better than I could explain in any other way. So there's making your customer the hero. It's something, a template that can be used, it can be pared away. There's certain elements that you can use to cross it. The one thing I say, the advantage of this is that it transcends societies. Like, people are used to this. Stories from different cultures, from different countries, everywhere, use this formula without being aware of it. And I think it's a powerful thing to communicate internally, and also when doing your campaigns, to have a checklist of what you need to do that fully integrated campaign and engage in a CX journey. So that's me, if anyone has any questions.